Hello. Software engineering processes produce a trove of data related to coding, testing, operations, requirements, and more. This data can be leveraged to make software development smarter, reliable, and cost effective. ING is a Dutch bank which, in the past few years, transformed from a finance oriented company to a software defined enterprise relying on in house software solutions for its financial services. In 2019, at the time of this study, the bank employed 45,000 people, of which one third, that is 15,000 people, worked in information technology. To just give a sense of scale, there were 600 teams performing more than 2,500 deployments for more than 750 applications. These activities left a trove of data that can offer valuable and actionable insights to ING. In its quest to put the development data to best use, ING needed questions that are relevant for their engineers, which their data scientists can answer. Fortunately, we are not the first to ask this question. 5 years ago, Microsoft conducted a study to investigate just this. From surveys conducted among engineers, researchers at Microsoft distilled 145 questions for data scientists in software engineering. At the time of our study, the Microsoft study had received 136 citations. To gauge the impact of the Microsoft study on the software engineering community, we investigated the characteristics of 70 out of 136 citations. The selected 70 papers had garnered at least one citation a year, suggesting its own impact. We noted that almost half of the studies used by the Microsoft study are plain references, while the other half used it as an example or answered one of the questions completely or partially. We also observed that the selected studies catered to a wide range of topics from analytics to testing, quality, processes, culture, and mobile applications. For details on the other aspects we investigated to measure the impact of the Microsoft study, please refer to our paper. While we as researchers acknowledge the relevance and impact of the Microsoft study, we foresee two challenges in adopting Microsoft's list of questions for ING. First, Microsoft is a software company while ING is a software-defined company with a different primary focus. We wondered whether the list of questions identified at Microsoft apply to ING. Our second concern related to the time frame. Microsoft's list of questions was created 5 years ago, and technology has changed since then and continues to change. This made us wonder whether the 145 questions are relevant 5 years later. To answer the relevance of the questions beyond Microsoft and guide other software-defined enterprises undergoing a digital transformation, ING, in collaboration with TU Delft, decided to replicate the Microsoft study. Our goal was to identify questions that impact software companies and software-defined enterprises and continue to impact software engineering. To replicate the study at ING, we conducted 2 surveys, same as Microsoft. The first survey identified data science problems in software engineering, while the second survey was used to rank the questions in the order of their relevance. Later, we compared questions from the 2 lists to answer our research question and present our reflections from conducting this study on the future research in software engineering, software companies, and software-defined enterprises. Following the footsteps of the Microsoft study, for the first survey, we selected a random sample of 1,002 engineers at ING, out of which 116 engineers responded with 336 questions. Next, we performed an open card sort on 336 questions, during which questions were sorted into meaningful groups. Finally, we combined related questions to generate a list of 171 unique descriptive questions. For the second survey, we shared the 171 questions to another random sample of 1,296 ING engineers for ranking the importance of the questions. The possible answers were essential, worthwhile, unimportant, unwise, and I don't understand. Using the split questionnaire method to avoid a low response rate, we received 21,888 rankings from 128 engineers. This gave us a list of top and bottom ranked questions. We also analyzed the relative relevance of the questions based on demographics. Following are some of the top essential questions. The most essential question in our list wanted data scientists to explore the impact of team happiness and pleasure at work on the productivity and performance of DevOps team. We had one question on how to build for reusability and scalability, and another question soliciting a comparison of the effort for fixing bugs and vulnerabilities in comparison to writing correct software from the start. We also identified some of the most unwise questions. The most unwise question solicited one software solution in one programming language catering all needs of people and their interest. Another question intended to convert PL1 code to COBOL while retaining readability. And finally, comparing performance of one department against another. After replicating the Microsoft study at ING, we took a step further, comparing the two lists of questions to identify similarities and differences. Our goal here was to consolidate the body of knowledge to answer our research questions, which we did in two steps. First, we compared the broader themes or categories across the two studies automatically using word count on text, as well as manually analyzing the broad themes. Second, we compared questions in the two lists using affinity diagrams to identify similarities and differences. Here is a picture of the resulting diagram. We started by placing 100 most essential questions at Microsoft based on similarity, followed by placing similar questions from ING, also 100 in count, next to it. Our study makes two remarks. It shows that the core software development problems of ING, a software-defined enterprise, are the same as for Microsoft, a software company. These problems relate to code, for example, understanding code in testing, developer productivity, both individuals and team, and customer. We observed that while the core challenges remain the same, there exist subtle differences in the type and the relevance of the question, which we believe relate to the context of the two companies and the time gap in between. Following are some examples of the subtle differences and its implication. First, indicating difference in focus, essential questions at Microsoft centers customer, while at ING, it is the engineering team itself. We also saw some questions appear only in one of the two lists. For example, we saw cloud-related questions in the Microsoft study and deployment-related questions at ING only. We believe that these differences relate to the specific context of the two companies. Relatedly, we saw differences in questions suggesting changing relevance of question. For example, we did not see questions on the adoption of agile versus waterfall and adoption of automated testing in the ING list. Instead, we saw questions on its functional aspect. This change suggests that in the last 5 years, as a community, we have identified the relevance of agile and automated testing and are now exploring its functionality. As a final example, we saw questions at Microsoft relating to the legacy code, for example, code monitoring and backward compatibility. We did not see such questions at ING. One way to potentially explain the observation is that Codebase at ING is not of the same scale as Microsoft. Nonetheless, it remains a lesson for the coming years as the code continues to grow in scale. So, reiterating the core message, our study suggests that the core software development problems of a software-defined enterprise are no different than a software company. Nonetheless, subtle differences exist relating to the context and the time span in between the two studies. We hope that the software engineering community builds on the new list of questions to create a useful body of knowledge. Apart from the list of questions that our study offers, conducting a replication study in industry taught us several lessons, which we want to share. Let me start by pointing out that replication in industry is difficult. Companies have different policies which can influence the availability of data as well as study design. As an example of policy, unlike the Microsoft study, we did not offer any reward to increase survey participation. This perhaps negatively influenced our response rate, but it aligns with the policy at ING. As another example from data, it is not necessary that two companies have comparable information. Unlike Microsoft, neither ING had employee database to rank response, nor the privacy regulations allowed us from asking people-related aspects such as years of experience. Even when the data was available, for instance designation, it was not comparable. Other than the above, creating a study independent of the prior study is challenging, and non-availability of script, on one hand, makes it harder to replicate as is. On the other hand, are hard to share given the sensitive nature of the information in scripts. Finally, we can foresee the challenges in presenting results free from corporate influence as well as self-censorship. Before concluding, I want to leave you with following thoughts. For software-defined enterprises undergoing digital transformation, we want to highlight that their IT challenges are not very different from software companies. As a software engineering community, our study strengthens the evidence from Microsoft's study in highlighting the need to understand not only what questions can be answered, but also which ones should be answered. We urge the community to build on the new list of questions to create a useful body of knowledge. This aside, as researchers, we should ask questions relevant to software-defined companies beyond the tech sector. We should replicate often and in different contexts, for example, automotive or healthcare sector. We believe that while the major software engineering problems are likely to be the same, we are likely to discover questions specific to the context and time, just as asked. Finally, some of the questions are fundamentally hard to answer. Organizations should make a starting point by collecting relevant data about their development process. Thank you for listening. We would love to hear your perspective.